What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the DFS Dose YouTube channel. I'm Ben Hauver, joined as I always am by Joey Carrion, and we have got some big news. Julio Jones has been traded to the Tennessee Titans. We're going to look at the fantasy impact. If you guys like what you see today, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like the video. You can also find the links to everything you need to support us in the description below. We got the podcast links, we got the Discord chat, we got our live streaming schedule, everything that you might need. Joey, let's talk Julio Jones. Compensation first, right? So he was given to the Tennessee Titans in exchange for a second-round pick next year and a fourth-round pick in 2023. In exchange, Julio Jones and a sixth-round pick shipped to Tennessee.
Yep. So pretty solid trade for the Titans, getting one of the best wide receivers of all time for a second-round pick, and just hurts me to see that happen since the Patriots traded a second-round pick for Mohamed Sanu just 2 years ago.
Wrong Falcons receiver.
Yeah, that's pretty terrible, but it's a solid trade for the Titans, and I think it impacts both sides of the ball pretty significantly. So we're going to go over that today in this video, and we're going to start with the Titans first. So how do you view Julio Jones on the Titans? Does this knock AJ Brown down for you in your rankings? Does it boost Ryan Tannehill in your rankings? Let me hear your thoughts.
I think it does both of those things. I think it boosts Ryan Tannehill, and I think it drops AJ Brown significantly. I want to say, when you look at some of the wide receivers he was going, his ADP was a top 5 wide receiver before, and he's still being drafted in that range. We did a draft, and we'll put the draft board up in a few minutes, but we just saw him go in the mid-second round. I think that that's an overdraft at this point. I don't think the targets are going to be there. We know that there were a lot of targets vacated this offseason from Tennessee's offense with the departure of Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, and even Adam Humphries to a certain extent, but I don't see that really growing for AJ or Julio. Julio averaged 7.5 targets per game. AJ Brown was in that same range. I think we see that hold with, Anthony Ferkser absorbing most of the Jonnu role, and, Josh Reynolds being, a complementary piece that gets targeted the way that Adam Humphries did.
I definitely agree with that take. Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, Adam Humphries all gone, which frees up 180 targets. So I think AJ Brown could see a little bit more targets than he did last year. He had 106. And then obviously Julio Jones comes in and commands some targets as well. But I think these are two guys that are going to average 7.5 to 9 targets per game is where I would currently project them for right now. We know that the Titans want to run the offense through the big dog. Shout out to Derrick Henry. He's going to get his 20, 25 touches per game. And unless we see a major scheme overhaul, that's not going to change in 2021. Derrick Henry is going to be the focal point of the Titans offense. And AJ Brown and Julio Jones, albeit great talents, they're going to be second and third on the team in touches. And that's just how it is. That's how I'm projecting it. Right now, we saw it last year. The Titans were third worst in the NFL in terms of passing attempts per game, throwing 30.1 pass attempts per game last year in 2020, only ahead of New England. This is a team that's just going to give Derrick Henry the ball over and over and over some more. So I'm not expecting that to change, like I said, and that just hurts the overall upside of AJ Brown and Julio Jones. Unfortunately, I know we had him pegged as a wide receiver that could finish as the wide receiver 1 overall, AJ Brown, that is, with no Julio Jones. I don't think that's possible anymore.
I agree. And the targets just simply won't be there. So, I think he does drop below, guys like DeAndre Hopkins, DK Metcalf, Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson. It's hard to even put him ahead of guys at this point like Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper and Michael Thomas, who could see literally logistically 40 to 50 more targets than him, the way that it plays out. So it's just tough, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree, especially with the wide receivers that are currently going below AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, etc. But AJ Brown and Julio Jones are two of the more efficient wide receivers in the NFL. Yards per route run, which is a very predictive stat of fantasy success. Julio Jones was number 3 in the NFL last year. AJ Brown was number 2 at 2.76 yards per route run. And, the volume might not be there, but I do think the efficiency will still be there in the Titans offense. We know AJ Brown could score touchdowns. Julio, not so much, but I think with having AJ Brown and Derrick Henry there, that should help Julio more than hurt. So I still like them, not knocking them too much, but I do think they deserve a slight bump down in rankings.
Yeah. For me right now, my initial thought is that AJ Brown is now a fringe wide receiver one, whereas he was in my top 5 before. And Julio barely moved at all for me. I mean, maybe a spot or two just off pass attempts, but I think he could have a more efficient season this year with AJ Brown on the other side. So, in terms of some of the other ancillary options, like for example, Josh Reynolds, RIP, I don't think he's draftable anymore. No. Anthony Ferkser, I think, takes a bit of a hit here, but he still should have a significant role. I mean, he had 53 targets last year, even when Jonnu Smith was there, and Jonnu Smith was scoring touchdowns at a decent rate, had a couple of multi-touchdown games. So I think that Ferkser will still have his week-to-week upside, although he may not finish with great season-long numbers.
Yeah, I definitely agree, especially with Ferkser. He's still the tight end one in Tennessee, and we saw last year that he is more than a capable pass catcher, and he's going to be used in that Titans offense. So I would expect for him to probably have around 80, 85 targets. He was around 50 last year, even with Jonnu there. So little target increase for Anthony Ferkser, but I still like him as a late round tight end option in fantasy. I think he's solid and has touchdown upside too. And
in terms of Tannehill, the volume is the only problem, right? Obviously, the talent is loaded at this point with AJ Brown and Julio Jones as the top 2 receivers. I just don't know that he'll have enough pass attempts to be in that, second tier of quarterbacks with guys like Jalen Hurts and Russell Wilson and Justin Herbert, even Joe Burrow, who, has the upside to be throwing 10 more passes per game than Ryan Tannehill, I think is a better pick. But when you look at guys who could be in efficient offenses and throw a lot of passing touchdowns, even without the volume, I think Tannehill's at the top of that list, right beside guys like maybe Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, Ryan Tannehill finished as the quarterback 7 last year in fantasy football, even with the Titans throwing the ball at one of the worst rates in the NFL. So we just know that the Titans are a very efficient offense, and I think that will be the case for 2021 as well. And Tannehill averaged 21.9 points per game last year, so pretty solid. And I definitely think he gets a boost, but if the volume isn't going to be there, his ceiling is obviously capped, and I wouldn't draft him above, obviously, the guys that have rushing upside, like Jalen Hurts and even Trevor Lawrence, but I'd consider him in, the 9th, 10th round.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And let's transition to the Atlanta side of the ball. What are your initial thoughts in the post-Julio Jones offense that they've left behind with the Falcons?
I mean, there's just 2 takes to have, I think, and that's Calvin Ridley to the moon. Straight up. And I think
to the skies. Yep.
And I think Kyle Pitts is on that ship right with him. I think those are the 2 takes. The Atlanta offense is devoid of talent at this point after that Julio trade. They really only have Ridley and Kyle Pitts. There's not much behind them on the depth chart at wide receiver. They have Olamide Zaccheaus, Russell Gage, Tajay Sharp. And then at the running back position, they have Mike Davis, Javion Hawkins, and a bunch of journeyman running backs. So very talent deficient offense now without Julio. So that means Kyle Pitts, Calvin Ridley, they're going to be the 2 main guys in that offense and should see plenty of targets on the team that threw the ball more than any other team in the NFL last year.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of talk, I think, about who the wide receiver 2 is going to be for Atlanta. Is it going to be Zaccheaus? Is it going to be Gage? No, it's going to be Kyle Pitts. Okay, yeah, he might be a tight end, but there is absolutely no shot that those other guys are going to be targeted at a higher rate. They took him as the highest tight end, the tight end that's been drafted the highest in NFL history with the 4th overall pick. They didn't do it to not target him, especially, with the comfort level of losing, probably the most elite player in franchise history in Julio Jones. Well, they found someone they think can replace that production, I think, and it's Kyle Pitts. It's certainly not going to be Olamide Zaccheaus or Russell Gage.
Yeah, 100%. And it wouldn't surprise me to see Kyle Pitts lined up out wide a lot of the time, or right in the slot. I think we're going to see Kyle Pitts there a lot, and I think he's going to excel in that role because I mean, he's just too big for cornerbacks and he's too fast for linebackers. He's just a mismatch nightmare, and he should feast with Matt Ryan in the Falcons offense, especially with their defense being terrible, like god awful.
It's atrocious.
So they should be losing. They're in a tough division as well, which bodes well for Kyle Pitts and Calvin Ridley. But obviously that's the popular take. I think everybody knows that both of those guys are going to eat this year. I think where we can have another conversation is obviously the lower tier guys, Russell Gage, Zacchaeus, Tajay Sharp, even Hayden Hurst, who will probably have a pretty solid role now without Julio there. I think that's who we should talk about, and especially Russell Gage, because this man got a 7-round ADP bump. He got drafted in the 11th round in the draft we just did, which you can view on the same feed of the DFS Dose if you want to check that out. But yeah, he was being drafted in the 17th, 18th round. If he's going to consistently go in the 11th round, I don't know if I'll have many shares of him, but he gets a very good bump as well in terms of usage. So
I don't think he's a bad pick. Like, I think he'll probably finish decently in terms of like overall wide receiver, but he's just not that guy in terms of points per game. Like, he had 1 or 2 fantasy points per game last season. He was like the wide receiver 47 in points per game in PPR. And I don't see that getting much better. I don't see him getting that much of a role change. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Julio's only leaving behind 7.5 targets per game. Like, it's not like Russell Gage is going to suddenly be one of the most targeted players in the league. Like, he's a Cole Beasley type. Like, he's just a standard slot receiver. Like, give me Sterling Shepard 5 rounds later.
Yeah, no, I think I tend to agree. Gage had 109 targets last year, 72 catches, 786 yards, and 4 touchdowns were his stats, 10 yards per catch. So pretty low. Calvin Ridley's was 15.3. So you could see the drastic difference between the two. But before the Julio trade, I think Russell Gage was a value.
Indeed.
Now, I don't think he's a value anymore. But like you said, he should finish relatively, around where he's going in terms of wide receiver, 40, wide receiver 45, somewhere in that range. I would expect him to finish it, but he's definitely like a low floor, low ceiling option, I think, in my opinion. Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts are the only guys I really want to target.
Now, in this draft that we just did, Kyle Pitts went to you with the second pick of the 6th round. And I'm actually a little surprised that his ADP hasn't jumped higher. I think that's a pretty fair price. I know that people are going to be skeptical of the rookie tight end thing, but I mean, God, this man, the upside is just so high in terms of target, in terms of talent, in terms of red zone threat. God, I don't know, man. Kyle Pitts, I think that tight end 4 in fantasy is where he should be being drafted at this point. I don't think that's a hot take.
Yeah. So I have the draft board on the screen right now, and just as Ben was referencing to, I drafted Kyle Pitts in the 6th round, beginning of the 6th round, as the tight end 4. As you could see, obviously the top 3 guys went, and I think this is where Kyle Pitts should go. I think he has more upside than Mark Andrews and TJ Hawkinson and Goddard, who Ben drafted, and this is my team. I think he does have more upside. He's more talented than these players. He's in a better situation, and he's just ready to come in as a rookie and see a lot of targets, and he should be very successful in his rookie year. And we were talking about it during the stream, but his over under right now on DraftKings Sportsbook is 750 receiving yards. I'm smashing the over.
Free money.
Smashing the over. But just talking about some other players that are part of this trade, you could see Julio Jones went 4-5, which is whatever. I don't know if I would take him there, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
I think I prefer Evans, Godwin, maybe DJ Moore even.
Yeah. And then Calvin Ridley, 2-8. AJ Brown went 2-7. And I know Ben mentioned that he would probably knock him down a couple spots behind these guys. So we could see AJ Brown's ADP fall. Calvin Ridley could get up to this tier, which I know that Ben is probably going to take him in this tier more likely than not. So these are just the ADP fallouts of the trade. And, I wouldn't say much has changed. I don't think really anything has changed besides Gage at 11-10. But
I mean, I think that Zacchaeus and is going to get drafted in every draft now. He wasn't even a thought in people's minds. How do you feel about Zacchaeus or, Tajay Sharp? Somebody in our chat mentioned him during the
Yep,
draft.
Tajay
I didn't
Sharp.
even remember that he was on the Falcons, to be honest, but he's a guy that I think has flash talent at some points.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that take. And I think I would expect Tajay Sharp to beat out Zacchaeus for that wide receiver 3 spot. But yeah, Zacchaeus didn't even get drafted in this draft, so maybe people aren't too high on him. I personally am not that high on him, but if he's going to see the field, he could be worth a shot in the 20th round or whatever. But at this point, I think Russell Gage gets a big boost, as we saw, and then Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts get a boost, but we may not see their ADPs rise, too much.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's going to be it, though. I think we've touched every side of this huge blockbuster trade. We've been talking about it for weeks. Where's Julio going to go? And turned out it would be Tennessee down south. So, shout out to the Titans. I think it makes them an elite team. Should be the favorites to win that division. I think you can get plus 110 on them at this point. I think that's a pretty solid bet as well. But that's going to be it, guys. If you liked what you saw, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure that you're, subbing to the podcast. Most importantly, drops at least once per week, every Thursday, Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher. Have a great
Links
time on
in the description. Check the description down below. We got Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud linked, but we're on all podcast platforms. So
all of them.
If you're on trash Android, we got those apps too. So
yeah, we do, boy.
Search them up.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks for watching, and we will be back soon.